is John Colo with DiscountJuicers.com. Today I have another exciting episode for you, and what we're going to do is a juice off today. So we're going to use two different juicers to juice the same amount of produce. We have some baby kale today, and we're going to be juicing the greens. Now in general, if you want to juice greens, and the majority of what you want to juice is greens, I recommend a horizontal single auger style machine. Those by far juice the greens the best. I mean, after all, this style machine was based on the old-fashioned hand crank wheatgrass juicer with a single auger, but they have improved this so that you can literally juice the leafy greens, which it does the best, and other things as well. That being said, I want to let you guys know that just like shoes, right? Certain pairs of shoes, high heels are good for going for a nice dress-up occasion, but the flats are better for maybe working or walking in, and hiking shoes are better for hiking. Juicers are the same way. You want to match the juicer with the produce you're juicing the most. So, say you want to juice leafy greens. In my opinion, the Breville centrifugal ejection style juicer would not be a good machine to use. Why? Because you'll put leaves in there, it spins at such high speed, it'll kick a leaf in, will barely get any juice out of it, kick whole leaves out of the juicer without being juiced, so it's a waste. That being said, if you want to do something like carrots and apples and hard vegetables and be done quickly, you can totally use one of those juicers with the 3-inch wide feed chute because they work fast, and actually they're quite good at juicing things like carrots and apples. Be aware though that every juicer, besides being good at certain produce items, also has its whole list of pros and cons, right? With the high speed machines, which I don't favor these days, they tend to put air in the juice and basically cause more oxidation, which lowers your nutrition in the juice. So for that reason, I recommend the slow running machines like I'm going to demonstrate today. Now I'm having two different kinds of single auger style machines. We have the Omega NC800, which is basically the new and improved version of the Omega 8004 and 8006. Be sure to check my other videos for a video where I compare this to the 8004, 8006 series so that you guys know the specific upgrades. Basically, this has an adjustable end cap that you can select the pressure, so this will keep the produce in the machine longer to get a further extraction. In addition, it also has more screen area than the previous version, which means there's more chance for that juice to come out so that you'll get a higher yield. And in fact, Omega claims that this machine gets 7 to 12% more juice than the predecessor model. Other than that, it's pretty similar, it works pretty similar. Oh, the other thing that's majorly different is this one has a larger feed chute than the Omega 8000 series. So, in my opinion, the larger feed chute alone is worth it because, trust me, when you're cutting up things in a little small piece that's going to fit in this feed chute, and it's a lot larger, it makes things so much easier. So this feed chute is actually like 80% larger. So that's definitely really good. Over on this side, what we're going to use against the NC800 is the Slowstar juicer. So the Slowstar juicer is a vertical single auger style juicer, and the auger in this machine runs horizontally, and it's long and skinny, and this is this kind of auger that I like best for juicing the leafy greens. Let's go ahead and take out the auger on the Slowstar machine. Once again, this is a auger as well, but it's a vertical auger, and here's the auger in this machine. So they work a little bit differently. On this auger here, as the produce goes in, it basically just chunks off pieces at a time, and this one works a bit differently because as you put the produce in, there's these little two blades, basically. They're not too sharp, but they're just plastic blades that basically cut the produce and accept it in the machine. So the manufacturer says that because of these blades, you don't have to pre-cut your produce as much. This can be especially important with the leafy greens. That being said, it's still optimal to pre-cut your produce in all vertical single auger juicers. But this one you may have to cut just a little bit less because it will do some of the cutting for you. So that's nice. So this juicer, based on my test, yields more juice than other vertical single auger style machines. So will that also hold true when we're juicing our leafy greens? Well, what I'm going to tell you is probably what's going to happen because I've been playing with juicers for many years now and I experience all different kinds of juicers. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. I mean, I already know the NC800 is going to win. But the thing that I want to know specifically is by how much. When I did a test of the predecessor model to the NC800, the Omega 8000 series, against an Omega Vert, with the similar baby greens pre-washed, I got 25% more juice in the previous model. So will one of these machines create more juice than the last test? And will the difference be as great? Well, that's what we're going to find out next. So first I want to explain, both these machines are excellent machines, and there's a few differences that I want to go into on the specs. I've already kind of gone over the NC800. Aside from just some of the improvements over the predecessor model, another great thing about the NC800 is that it has a 15-year warranty. So that's the longest warranty in the juicing industry, backed up by Omega, who has been making juicers for many years now. One of the oldest juicing companies in the US, still standing, because there's actually not too many. Let's go ahead and reassemble this machine. It's very simple. We got the auger in there. We're just going to put the screen on. And I do want to mention that, both these machines are what I call lifestyle machines. They're not just juicers. A lot of juicers you might buy at the department store locally. You could just only make juices with them. These machines, besides making juices, both these machines, and the Slowstar is actually rare for doing this, it'll make things like sorbets, nut butters, pâtés, and even sauces. Because this one has what's called a homogenizing or mincing attachment included with it, and no other vertical single auger juicer currently includes that. And of course the NC800 also includes a blank plate, which allows you to do exactly the same thing. So stay tuned for episodes when I'm using the homogenizing attachment and the homogenizing blank on this machine and put them head to head, processing different produce items. So next, let's talk about ease of cleaning. Because, besides buying the juicer that's going to juice best, what you want to juice most, and over on this side, we didn't talk about that, the Slowstar juicer really is optimal at juicing things like the fruits. Vertical upright juicers are definitely good for the fruits. These ones are not as good for the fruits. And then the vertical uprights also juice the vegetables actually quite well. The hard vegetables like the carrots and whatnot, they do a good job on that. With the leafy greens, as I said, this guy is a bit better for the leafy greens. And, this guy will juice hard vegetables and whatnot, but I prefer that style just for, a few different reasons. Anyways, back to the cleaning. On the cleaning, this juicer takes me under 2 minutes to clean. This juicer takes me, probably about 3.5 minutes to clean. So both these juicers are some of the easiest juicers out there. That being said, the Slowstar will take a little bit longer to clean because it has a much greater screen area. The screen area is the hardest part to clean on any juicer. Next, let's talk about the Slowstar juicer and some of its features that set it apart from the other vertical single auger machines on the market. The first thing about the Slowstar juicer is that it runs at a low 47 RPM. So the NC800 runs at 80 RPM, as do most other single and vertical auger juicers out there. So I like the lower RPM on this machine, and they say due to the dual blade, it does twice the work in half the time. That being said, these are slow juicers, and you don't want to just keep cramming stuff in the machine as fast as you can, because you're probably going to be overloading the machine. You want to, take your time, feed one handful, let the machine work a little bit, let some of the juice and the pulp come out, and then feed another one. It's like if you're just trying to stuff your face because you're at McDonald's and you got an all-you-could-eat for $5 in 5 minutes, and you're just, Aah! But in my opinion, that's not healthy, whether it's $5 in 5 minutes at McDonald's or just eating McDonald's. In my opinion, people need to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, and that's why I like these machines that allow you to do just that. Anyways, other features on the Slowstar that set it apart are, besides the low RPM, the dual cutting blade. It basically, through gear reduction, has 9 horsepower equivalent of torque to basically extract the juice out of the produce you're putting in it without hopefully clogging up. I haven't actually had it stop up on me too much. And the other feature I like on this is the homogenizing attachment that allows you to make nut butters and sorbets. Other vertical single auger machines do not have this. Now the warranty on the Slowstar, once again, it's a great warranty. It's 10 years, and I want to encourage you guys, when you buy a juicer, one of the factors you should keep in mind is the warranty. You want to get a long warranty, but not only a long warranty. You want to get a warranty from a company that's been around the block. A company that's been here, not a new company that just started selling juicers as their first entry into the market, because you know what? Companies come and go, and when the companies go, guess where your warranty goes? It's also gone. So Tribest has not been in business as long as Omega, but they're a good solid company that's been in selling juicers in the US for many years now. So let's go ahead and reassemble this machine. Now, assembly on the Slowstar juicer is a little bit more complex you have to line up some dots and not as straightforward as this. But for all practical purposes, it's pretty easy to assemble and not a big issue. So the next thing I want to talk about is preparing the produce to juice. So in the Slowstar and all vertical auger juices, I recommend pre-cutting your leafy greens if you're not using the baby greens that I am today. So if you have big, large stalks of kale or collard greens or Swiss chard or celery, you want to pre-cut those. You know, the manufacturer says you could probably cut these into a few inch pieces. I would recommend cutting them into 1/8 inch pieces like on all vertical augers for the best results, because basically in these machines the pulp has to come down and make a right angle to come out, and that's where many juicers may get clogged up if you're not pre-cutting all the fibrous strings in some of those stalks. Whereas on the NC800 you'll never have that issue, because due to this design you put it in, the right angle is actually right as you're feeding it in, then it just has a straight shot out, so it has much less of a tendency to get clogged. Let's see, I guess aside from that, these juices are pretty straightforward, and we're just going to get into the juice off, because I'm going to get to drink this delicious juice after it's made. So what we're juicing today is the baby mixed kales here, and I like juicing these guys because they are triple wash, so I can just literally open the pack and juice it without me having a fuss with washing kale greens. In addition, this is the secret, many Costco's sell the baby mixed kales now, and they're the lowest price that I've ever been able to find. So that's really good. Hovers around maybe $2 to $3 a pound, which is actually cheaper than a spring mix in many cases. And the other thing that I want to let you guys know is that the baby greens are much more mild than the hardcore big leaves of kale. I know many of you guys may have drinking kale juice before with the big leaves, and man, it just tastes so gross, but you got to drink it because you know it's good for you, right? No fear, if you're drinking the baby leaves, the juice from the baby leaves, they taste much better. So that's why I recommend using these, because they're pre-washed. Open it up and juice. You know, I want to make juicing as easy as possible for you, and that's why I make these videos, so you can decide which juicer is going to make it easy and allow you to juice more of the fresh goodness in the leafy green vegetables as well as the hard vegetables. And I do recommend actually blending fruits. So let's go ahead and just rip this guy open. Once again, these are 1 pounders. We're just going to open this guy and turn this machine on. One of the things I like about both these machines is that these are quiet juicers. They run at low RPM, so they're fairly quiet. So if you have, kids sleeping, or your husband or wife sleeping, or roommates, when you're juicing in the morning, this is probably not going to wake them up. So I got the machine turned on. We're just going to go ahead and slowly feed in the leaves in the machine. Now, I always want to remind you guys, you want to get the right juicer for the right job. Be sure to check my videos to see, how each juicer does with different produce items, because every juicer is a little bit different. And I explained, some of the pros and cons of this machine earlier, and what, produce items this machine can juice best. Oh, the other thing we want to do is we want to crank the adjustment here to number 5. And this is going to get the most yield out of the baby kales that we're juicing today. So one of the things I like about the NC800 over the 8000 series is the larger feed chute. I mean, you guys can't see it, but here's the pusher for the feed chute. This is considerably larger and makes it a lot easier to push, handfuls of the kale into the machine. If I was using the 8000 series machines, this would take me significantly longer, because you just can't shove things in as quickly as you can with this one. Another thing I want to talk about actually is that many of you guys, if you're juicing kale like this, like I'm doing, you do not want to drink this kale straight, as I will do, and actually later I'm probably going to blend it up into a green smoothie with fresh kale juice and bananas and some coconut water. But you don't want to drink the straight kale juice. That can be quite strong unless you're an advanced juicer and been doing it for a while. It's kind of like drinking wheatgrass, like the kale. It's so strong. Like any straight green juice is not optimal, in my opinion, for many people. I would always recommend diluting down your juices. So whether you want to do that by adding water, or in my opinion what's better is to juice some kale and juice a lot of celery and cucumber. So basically a quarter of your glass should be like the greens, the dark leafy greens, and then 3/4 of the glass, the majority of your glass, should not be green juice. It should be other green vegetables, such as the celery, such as the cucumber, such as zucchini, such as romaine lettuce hearts. Works really well. If you need it a little bit sweet, add a couple apples, you know, not the worst thing for you. And maybe even add some lemon if you want to even get the flavor out more. Add a little bit of ginger. A little bit of ginger goes a long way, and that's gonna not even make it taste like green juice anymore. It's gonna taste totally different. Now I do always recommend that you guys keep your juice recipes simple. A lot of people may put like everything but the kitchen sink in the juices, and I know many of you guys may have done that before. I don't recommend that. I've done that before, and you could make some really nasty juices. So I try to keep all my juices under 5 to 6 ingredients max. And if you have other ingredients in the fridge going bad, well, you know, pick the ones that are going bad first, use those today, and then you save a bunch for tomorrow and make a different juice tomorrow with a different 5 or 6 ingredients. So that way you get diet rotation. You're not mixing a ton of things in just one juice. As you can see, this is going really well, and I want to show you guys the dryness of the pulp and some of the juice coming out. So as you guys can see, I'm continuing to juice the leaves in the NC800. In my opinion, this is superior, much superior than the old 8000 series machines. Just a larger feed chute, man. I get frustrated when things go too slow. This is allowing me to go at a nice, faster pace, and I like that a lot. And the machine is not bogging down one bit when I'm putting all these greens in there. And check it out, I'm putting the greens in, and it's literally taking those greens up and just literally squeezing the juice out of them. As the auger takes the greens in, it basically compresses the space that the greens are in and literally squeezes the juice out. As you guys can see here, the juice is dripping out the bottom of the machine, and it's pretty much a juice consistency. There's no clumps, no globs. Now depending on what you're juicing, there may be clumps and globs. Like if you're juicing parsley or cilantro, that tends to clump and glob up a little bit for me. But otherwise, this is doing really good. This has a dual screen system, so this has a stage 1 screen, a stage 2 screen. The stage 1 screen on the initial crush may let a little bit more pulp in the juice, but the stage 2 screen is nice and small holes that's not going to let pretty much any pulp through and give you a nice texture. Another thing I want to show you guys really quick is this pulp coming out. Let me go ahead and get a good pulp stream coming out for you guys so you guys can see what's going on that. Alright, so there's the pulp stream coming out. As you guys can see, the pulp just comes out, and you know, this stuff coming out, it's kind of like out of a wheatgrass machine. You know, when you get the grass all juiced up. I mean, this stuff, super dry. I mean, I could press this in my hands, and I mean, there's very little juice in it. I mean, that's why I like the horizontal style juicers for juicing leafy greens, because they are simply the most efficient. Especially this NC800 with this dial on the end. And let me show you guys this real quick, because this is actually very important. This little adjustment here, there's a little arrow, and as you guys can see, it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 0 is actually to take it off. When juicing greens and other hard vegetables, you want to keep it on 5. This will allow the pulp to stay in there longer to get it fully juiced. If I juiced with it when this was in a position of a 1, it's going to let the pulp out prematurely, and you're going to be leaving juice in your pulp. So I always recommend you starting on the highest number possible. If your juicer is getting clogged up and there's things coming back up the feed chute here, then you're going to want to loosen it off to 4, 3, 2, 1 if you have to get things flowing again. Looks like we're pretty much done juicing the baby kale here. Let's go ahead and put the last bit into the machine and put this right down in there and let it get juicing. Now, one of the things I want to remind you guys is that with all single auger juicers, you want to put the last produce item in there and give it some time to run before you just turn off the machine. In addition, don't be alarmed when you are taking this apart for the first time to clean it, because there always will be some unjuiced leaves in the single auger machines. One of my tricks that I like to do is, feed your last piece of produce in as a sacrificial piece of produce, because it may not get juiced. So the leaves and leafy greens are expensive, so I might take a couple cucumbers at the end just to feed it in, and knowingly that some of the cucumbers won't get juiced, but my leaves are, because definitely you want to get the juice of the leafy greens in you. They're the most nutritious foods on the planet with the least amount of calories. So as you guys can see, this is working pretty well. We're going to go ahead and turn this guy off. And it looks like we got a bunch of pulp here, and we got some juice. And I want to give you guys a close-up on the juice there. Once again, this juice does have some foam in it. You might be saying, John, this juicer has foam, what's up? Well, all juicers will create some level of foam in the juice. You know, it depends on the juicer specifically, the produce you're using, and whatnot, and that's going to determine the foam. If I wanted to reduce the foam on this green juice, it would have been advantageous for me to juice like leafy greens, a handful, and then like a handful of celery, leafy greens, and then celery. You know, basically the foam is caused by extra airspace in the juicer as it's running, and if you keep that airspace filled up with something, whether it's carrots, celery, or cucumbers, it's going to foam a lot less. So that's what you want to remember to reduce the foam if it bothers you. The foam will basically recondense into juice, and I also like to, you know, strain it out because I don't like, you know, getting a foam mustache. Now let's juice in the Slowstar juicer. Definitely the Slowstar is at my top of the list for my favorite vertical single auger juicers. You know, at the top of my list are the Slowstar and the Omega Vert 400. I'm not exactly sure which one's like better. They each have their pros and cons, and I'm still getting to learn the Slowstar, so give me a couple more months and then I'll definitely know for sure which one I like more. So far, so good. My experiences with the Slowstar have been great. So now we're going to juice the 1 pound of the leafy greens. Once again, we got the baby kale in the Slowstar. One of the things I like, once again, this is quite silent. Another thing I want to mention to you guys is, you know, these juices are different formats. This one's actually long and skinnier, takes up a fair bit of counter space. This one saves counter space. So you want to take these factors into whenever you're buying a juicer. For me, how it works and how it juices, like, you know, and juicing best, what I'm going to juice most is more important than space considerations for me personally. But, you know, maybe at the top of your list is space considerations. I don't really know. So yeah, I like the upright format of this a lot better. So we're just going to go ahead and feed the produce into the Slowstar, and let's just compare the feed chute sizes actually. So the Slowstar pusher does not fit in the NC800, but the NC800 pusher will fit in the Vert. That being said, I want to let you guys know about pushers and pushing produce into the machines. You only ever want to use the pusher to push things in the machine. It's been far too often I have customers that, oh, something's stuck in there, and they stick a knife in, and then it breaks the auger and it breaks the juicer, and then guess what? You know, that's not covered under warranty when it's due to neglect and abuse, and you have to buy new parts, and some of these augers get quite expensive. So remember that. Only use the pusher that came with the juicer to push the produce in the machine. So in the Slowstar, we're using the pusher, and based on my assessments at this time, the Slowstar, you should not use the pusher whenever possible. You should only use the pusher to unjam things that are clogged in there. If you do cut things into small enough pieces, the Slowstar will be more, you know, auto-feeding than the NC800. That being said, the Slowstar is still not as auto-feeding in my tests compared to like the Omega Vert series of machines. So once again, pros and cons to every machine. As you can see, we're putting a whole bunch of leafy greens in the Slowstar, and actually we haven't got one iota of juice or actually the pulp out yet. So this is actually quite interesting. I know in the vertical auger machines, generally they need something hard and fibrous to juice properly. So it'll be interesting to see if this actually does work or not. You know, it'd be far better if you do want to make combination juices, like, you know, carrot leafy green or cucumber leafy green or celery leafy green, to do that combination in the vertical single augers. You know, that's why I say if you want to juice mostly and straight leafy greens, got to stick with this side of the table. If you want to juice a lot of fruits and hard vegetables as well as leafy greens mixed in, then, you know, this guy might be a better idea. You can finally see that we're getting some juice out, and it's just dribbling out that side, and we're getting the pulp out this side. And the pulp is actually looking fairly dry. So actually this juicer may actually be doing better than other vertical auger juicers in that department. So this is definitely quite interesting. Alright, so I'm continuing to juice in the Slowstar. We got pretty much the pusher filled up with greens. It's not going in, so we're going to have to use the pusher to slowly push it in. We don't want to just take the pusher and cram it in as fast as we can. We want to feed in some of the greens a little bit at a time to allow the juicer to work properly. So, you know, it is actually a fair bit difficult. I probably should have put a handful in and then pushed it in instead of filling up the whole chute and then trying to push the whole mass in. This is actually taking a little bit of force here. Alright, there we go. Got all those greens in, and as you guys can see, the juice is flowing out. One of the things I like about the Slowstar over some of the other vertical auger juicers is that it sits higher. This may mean that it may not fit underneath your kitchen cabinets. If you have a standard home with 16-inch cabinets, this should fit. If your cabinets are a little bit lower, then it may not fit. So that may be a consideration you want to take. I kind of like the tallness because I could put like a wide mouth quart mason jar underneath here and just catch my juices directly into that. As you guys can see, we're about halfway done juicing the baby kale in the Slowstar machine. It's working good so far. The pulp's coming out ever so slowly, not getting clogged up on that right angle, and the juice is coming out as well. Now I want to talk for a second about the leafy greens. In my opinion, leafy greens are the #1 vegetable you guys should be juicing, in my opinion. You know, in America, most Americans do not eat enough leafy greens, especially dark leafy greens like the kale. It's my goal to eat 2 pounds of leafy greens every single day. And you know, whether I'm juicing 1 pound, get 1 pound in that way, whether I'm blending a pound into a green smoothie, or whether I'm eating a pound in my salad, you know, those are 3 easy ways you can get more greens in you. Of course, the easiest way is simply by juicing. When you juice 1 pound of greens, in general, most juicers will produce, depending on the juicer, about a cup of juice. Some more, some less, depending on if they're a good juicer for leaves or a bad one. And so, you know, literally taking 1 pound of leaves that you would normally have to eat and condensing it and just getting the nutrition out of it by juicing it is an excellent way to get more greens in you. As you guys can see, I'm continuing to juice in the Slowstar, almost done juicing these leafy greens in it. Gotta push in a handful, then slowly push it in. As I push the greens in, you guys can see the juice coming out, the little waterfall there. And over on this side, you can see actually the pulp coming out. And I want to give you guys a close-up on the pulp coming out. Now this whole port here is maybe like 1 inch wide, and I do want to let you know that it is quite common for, you know, a portion of the port to be blocked. At this time, I would probably estimate that 30% of the port is blocked, so you know that's quite fine. As long as pulp is still flowing out the port, you're still fine. So another thing I want to show you guys is actually all the foam being generated with the Slowstar machine. I mean, it's more than half foam, and this is pretty much normal for vertical single augers. Due to the design of the auger, there's going to be basically more air space that needs to be filled up with cucumbers or celery or something so that you get less foam. So if you're juicing this with a combination of things, you would get less foam than I'm getting. Once again, I'm only juicing the leafy greens to show you guys a strict comparison of which machine in general will juice straight leafy greens better. Of course, if we had a different comparison like with leaves and celery, then of course the results are going to vary. So be sure to check my other videos for, you know, videos when I juice other things in both these machines. Well, that's pretty much my last handful of leafy greens I'm juicing. We're going to go ahead and let this run for a minute and let all the rest of the juice come out. So first, let's go ahead and weigh the pulp that came out of the NC800. First, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know how it feels to me. I mean, this is pretty much just a green pulp. I prefer to actually compost this. If you have a worm bin, great for the worms. Not much else you could do with it. Maybe like a facial mask or a poultice. But this is a nice globber here, and as you can see, if I squeeze it, you know, we are getting a few drips of juice out. You know, there's still a little bit of juice, but it's definitely admirable how well the NC800 did. Got all the pulp in there now, and as you guys can see, it's weighing out at 0.324, so approximately 1/3 of a pound of the pulp. Over on the Slowstar juicer here, once again, gonna check the pulp out and feeling the pulp. Once again, you can drip a little bit of juice out. It did also an admirable job, and we're gonna go ahead and put that in there and weigh the pulp that came out. And it looks like it weighs out at 0.24 or so. So basically got a 1/4 of a pound of pulp. Alright, so we're just going to move these scales and the pulp out of the way, and once again, I would not take into consideration how much juice was left in the pulp because the juicers may contain still some pulp within it. But the most important thing is the yield. So let's check that out. Once again, we're going to take our measuring cups And we're going to pour both juices through the same identical strainer here to figure out which juicer created more yield. Now, in my opinion, the NC800 will have more yield, but let's see if I'm right. Once again, we're going to go ahead and pour this juice out through the strainer, and yes, the strainer is catching some of the pulp that was left in the juice that the juicer was not able to extract out. And as you can see, there's also some foam in there as well. We're going to go ahead and let that sit upside down, let some of that drain out. Now we're going to pour the juice from the Slowstar into the collection cup here. As you can see, actually a lot more foam, and I can't really see any pulp because it's being covered by foam if there's any. And we're just pouring that right through. But yeah, definitely lots of foam. I'm going to once again set this guy on there and you know, just let these guys hang out for a little bit and drip on down to see how much yield each juicer created. So now the part you've been waiting for, actually, the yield results. So let's go down to the yield results. I've given these both a little bit of time to strain out, and I do want to let you guys know that we did make the juice in the NC800 first, so some more of the foam probably dissipated into juice, whereas with the Slowstar there's still a considerable amount of foam and it did create more foam. But if we look at the yields here over on the NC800 side, looks like we got pretty much a little bit, maybe like we got about 1 cup of juice, and which is over 200 milliliters, just a tad, as you guys could see. And then if we go over to the juice on the Slowstar machine, we basically got maybe just a tad under 200 milliliters, and once again, this is about a cup as well. So what does that tell us? That tells us these machines are pretty much equal, but if you gotta pick a clear winner, I'd probably go with the NC800. In general, this style machine creates a higher yield with less foam, which is gonna be more nutrition for you. In addition, this machine's also easy to clean. That being said, over on the Slowstar juicer, you know, it's quite potentially that the Slowstar juicer is the best vertical single auger juicer that I've tested for date with the leafy greens, because it pretty much almost kept up with the NC800 on how it worked. That being said, it did create an excessive amount of foam, and once again, foam is basically air bubbles, and air bubbles causes oxidation, which reduces the nutrition in the juice. That being said, I always recommend you guys use the juices right after you're done making it. Don't let them sit around, you know, because they will lose nutrition over time. That being said, both these companies claim that you can store the juices for up to 3 days or 72 hours after you make it, and I always recommend for best use to drink it right after you make it. If I do store juices, which is really rare, I'll only store them for up to 24 hours myself. And be sure to check my past videos. I have a really excellent video on how to store the juices the best way so that you can save most nutrition in there. So I guess the next thing is the taste test part that I'm kind of dreading, because this stuff is going to taste strong, and I'm not a masochist or anything. So first we're going to go ahead and taste the juice from the NC800. Once again, I do not recommend you do this at home. Alright, straight green juice. That's how it really tasted, man, let me tell you. It's hecka strong, dude. So you guys want to like mix this up with some celery and cucumbers, romaine lettuce, and some apples. At least I'd like this better than wheatgrass, for sure. Alright, let's try the juice from the Slowstar. Alright, made it down. Whew. Honestly, I can't really tell the difference. They're both overwhelming, and I'm super glad these are baby kales instead of like larger leaves, and then it would have been more of a problem going down. That being said, the moral of the story is dilute your juices. If you do dilute your juices by juicing other water-rich vegetables, then you know the results of the test are going to be different, and I don't know how that's going to turn out because I haven't done it yet. But rest assured, no matter which one of these juicers you go with, you know, each one has their pros and cons. I make all these videos so that you guys can decide which juicer will be the best for you. So be sure to check my other videos for me juicing other items in these machines to see how they work with other items besides just the leaves that I did today. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode learning more about the NC800 and the Slowstar juicer. Once again, my name is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Be sure to visit DiscountJuicers.com/YouTube for special promotional offers for our YouTube visitors. Alright, this is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Today I have another exciting episode for you. We got the juice off you guys have been waiting for. So what we're going to do today is we're going to compare the all-new Slowstar juicer, runs at 47 RPMs or revolutions per minute, which may just be my new favorite vertical auger juicer, with the Omega Vert 400. Now the Omega Vert series of juicers has been my favorite vertical slow running juicer for the longest period of